Hey guys, I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and Android 2.2 is hard enough to come by on some high-end smartphones, not to mention mid-range phones. You don't really see it yet. You know, Android 2.2 is coming to the high-end stuff. We're still running Android 2.1, 1.5, 1.6 on a lot of mid-range devices. That's one of my favorite things about the LG Optimus S with Sprint. It comes with the Android 2.2 out of the box, and it's Sprint's version of the LG Optimus line. So, you know, feature-wise, it's pretty mid-range, high-end specs are few and far between. It has a 3.2-inch display, 3.2 megapixel camera, but it is running Android 2.2 out of the box. So pretty cool there. You're updated and ready to go when you buy it. So is it the best mid-range device in Sprint? Is it the one to buy? We'll take a look in the full review. But first, special thanks to our friends at Best Buy Mobile for hooking us up with 2 of these so we can give them to you in the One Paw Bandit game. You know, you go into Best Buy Mobile, you don't have to deal with mail-in rebates. The price you see is the price you pay. You don't have to wait 8 to 10 weeks or deal with messy paperwork. But enough of that. Let's get into the review. LG Optimus S starts right now. So here's the LG Optimus S. It's available on Sprint, and it's available now for $49.99 after a $100 mail-in rebate if you're in the store. On the web, they're running a special right now where you get $100 off instantly. So about 50 bucks after mail-in rebate. It joins the Optimus T on T-Mobile, the Optimus U on US Cellular, and it's, you know, as it sounds, it's a member of LG's Optimus line of devices. This is actually one of my favorite mid-range devices, and I'll tell you why. It runs Android 2.2 out of the box. You know, we have a hard enough time getting high-end smartphones up to Android 2.2. You know, there's still a handful that are still running Android 2.1. You know, and you look at a mid-range device like this, and say out of the box, it's running Froyo. That's a nice touch there. So they did a good job on that front. You know, when you really look at it outside of Sprint ID, and this, just so you know, there's 2 other devices that run Sprint ID, the Kyocera Zayo and the Samsung Transform. But outside of those 2, or outside of those devices, rather than the changes with Sprint ID, like the shortcut here, a couple of the customized Sprint widgets, it's a relatively stock build of Android. So you go into the menu, you know, you go to messaging, for example, and you know, you compose a new message, and you can see it's, you know, it's the vanilla Android interface. So very, you know, other than the Sprint ID customizations, it's a clean stock build of Android 2.2. So that's a nice touch there. You know, it's a nice device, 3.2-inch display, 3.2 megapixel camera, and just to recap a little bit on the body, because they are different from carrier to carrier. You have the volume rocker on the right side, voice command shortcut, camera shortcut, and then on the left side, your micro SD card slot. On the bottom, you have 4 physical buttons: home, menu, back, and search, typical Android buttons. And then on the front, you have 5 Android home screens. So you have those there, and you know, for the most part, pretty typical build of Android. Now let's jump just right into messaging. The first thing I always like to cover is the physical, or the on-screen keyboard rather. So we'll go into messaging, we'll hit a new message, and you can see on a 3.2-inch display, you know, it depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from a feature phone, it's a decent display. If you're coming from a 4-inch display or a 4.3-inch display, this may be a little bit too small for you. So, you know, of course you can use it in portrait and in landscape mode there, but, you know, it may be a little bit too small for some people. So let's type something as a test. The quick brown fox wants a beer. Quick brown fox, or the quack brown fox, quick. The quick brown fox wants a beer. So the quick brown fox wants a beer. In portrait, you know, I had a couple of errors, but no more than I would have with a regular device. Now that said, you know, the keys are a little bit smaller. Let's see if I can get this close without it focusing out. You can see the keys are pretty small, and even in portrait mode, or landscape mode rather, in comparison to a 4-inch device or 4.3-inch device, the keyboard's tiny. If you have small fingers, small hands, you shouldn't have an issue. If you have larger fingers, you may want to check it out in store prior to buying, and you may want to look at something with a little bit of a larger display on Sprint, like the Evo. You know, unfortunately, that goes into a higher price point, but you may want to look into that. But for those of you that don't like the on-screen Android keyboard, you can switch the input method to swipe, and you have that pre-installed. So for a device like this that's a little bit smaller on the display front, you can go to this, and it's a little bit easier to draw, you know, which I'm not great at it, but you can see. Yeah, how are you? Ooh, now. Doing. So you can see, you know, you can use that, and it takes advantage of devices with smaller displays like this. So that's available in addition to the Android keyboard. Let's check out and see what's installed on the device. You know, it's typical Android programs up until the Sprint side here: Sprint Football Live, Sprint ID, Sprint TV, and Sprint Zone, along with Telenav GPS Navigator. So otherwise, you have pretty stock Android stuff. pre-installed. So let's talk a little bit about Sprint ID, because it's something new that they announced at CTA in San Francisco a couple of months ago. And, you know, it's intended to be a custom skin program, and it's a really great idea, but in my opinion, very poor implementation, at least on these first few devices. You can see we jump into Sprint ID. We can choose the ID. So let's get a new one, for example. We'll jump into Sprint ID, and we'll pick, let's do the Yahoo ID pack. You can see kind of similar to Android Market in terms of the way it looks. We'll install that. Terms and conditions, come on. We'll install that when that pops up. Okay, terms and conditions, we agree. So we're downloading. So it may take a few minutes. You know, it's downloading over 3G. So even though it's EVDO revision A connectivity, it takes some time to download. You can see that's the one instant criticism of Sprint ID is that the ID packs take forever to download. So you can see it's only at 3% right now, and moving pretty slowly. So once the ID pack is fully downloaded, like we did with the Yahoo, and we can click on that, it'll say please wait, and it'll push over into a Yahoo-centric ID pack. Changes the background, adds some apps, Yahoo Messenger, Mail, things of that nature on the desktop, and then you can see Yahoo Fantasy Football, live scores, Mail, Messenger, OMG, oh my goodness, and weather, and a couple of other, weather and Yahoo are all there now that the app pack's been installed. So not only is it an app, you know, it's an app pack and a custom skin in one. So you know you can browse and see those, but the frustration is they take a long time to download, and they're not all that functional as of yet. That said, 6 months from now, a year from now, if Sprint ID continues, we'll hope to see some additional packs and some additional solutions to downloading those a little bit faster. Let's take a look at the browser, and you can see it is running Android 2.2, so Flash is enabled out of the box, and we can go over here. Let's go to Phone Dog. Let me switch back to Android because I don't care for swipe. Personally, I don't care to use it, but it is a certainly cool technology. I'm just old school. I like the keys. Phone Dog. Okay, phonedog.com. And while that's loading, you can see a couple of other, you know, typical Android browser options: new window, bookmarks, windows, stop, and more. If we want to open up another window while we're waiting for that to load, we can do so. Go to a mobile site like CNN. And then while that's loading, we're like, ah, bah humbug, both of those are taking too long. Let's go back to Phone Dog and see if it's loaded. We can click on that, and you can see that it's still loading in the browser. You know, of course, you can use that in landscape mode as well as portrait. You know, it'll be interesting to see as a mid-range device with a processor somewhere in the 600 to 700 megahertz or 720 megahertz range. It'll be interesting to see how quick pinch to zoom is with Flash kind of bogging it down. So we'll be sure to take a look at that. Let's see if CNN, while that's finishing up, see if CNN's loading. You can see there it is. No pinch to zoom on the mobile version of CNN, but you can see the scrolling is pretty quick with little to no lag whatsoever there. Let's go back into Phone Dog, and you can see the Flash advertisements on the site. LG's ad just loaded, and let's take a look at the pinch to zoom. Now, as I expected, you know, it's pretty laggy. You can see push in. It's taking a second or two to respond. We'll zoom over here. Let's see. Do that, and you can see we'll zoom over there, and it's pretty slow to respond, but you can see pinch to zoom. It's there, it's available in the browser, but for those of you that are used to Windows Phone 7, higher-end Android devices, this could be a bit frustrating. Taking a look at the Gmail application, you'll see it's pretty similar to the other devices that are running Android 2.2, but if you're coming from something like Android 2.1 or 1.5, 1.6, something of that nature, it's an entirely new interface on a couple of different fronts. One, you can add email accounts. Well, first of all, if you're coming from 1. whatever, you can add more than one Gmail account. If you're coming from 2.1, you can do it from the top here, as you saw me do. So I can click on Old Man McTweety, I can add an account, or I can click on it to go back. Now, another neat feature that I like a lot in the new Gmail is the ability to scroll up and keep the header at the top. Every now and again, you'll be halfway through an email, and you're like, who sent me this? What's their email address? Thanks to this, you can be halfway up or halfway down, depending on a glass half full, glass half empty. Or you can be all the way down and still see the header, so it's a nice touch there. You have the ability to reply all on forward from the top, as well as star the email should you so choose. Typical settings other than that in the Gmail application, but those are two nice touches in Gmail and Android 2.2. On that topic, the Android market's changed from older versions of Android. You have a couple of different options in this one that you didn't have in past versions. Let's go to an app, for example, like we'll just download, or we'll start to download a free app. Let's do Pandora Radio. Or actually, take that back. Let's go over here and let's see what we have downloaded already. Now, the typical thing that everybody likes about Android 2.2, click speed test, for example, and you can allow automatic updating as long as that checkbox is checked. So whenever there's an update to speed test or whatever application or applications you downloaded, you can make sure that automatic updating is checked, and you don't have to worry about going into Android Market for updates. It'll automatically do it. Now, some applications still require manual update, but that's a nice touch on that front. For the most part, the rest of the changes are organizational changes. You'll notice that comments and related, two new tabs here. You'll see the about. Scroll up and down, you can see the about and the screenshots. You can go over the different tab for comments, and then you can scroll over to yet another tab for related. So a little bit more organized, becoming more of an organized marketplace like iOS, or like the App Store rather, and becoming more mature in the long term. So very nice touches in the marketplace. In terms of the phone app, very similar to any stock phone app you've seen on Android. Not a great deal of changes in this. Typical island buttons here. Voicemail, call, and back. Call log, typical. Contacts, typical. Favorites. Of course, you can add favorites depending on who you like to call or talk to the most. Now, same thing with contacts. Actually, I'll go back to that. Same thing with contacts. Very similar. We can click here. We can go to new contact, and we'll do me, for example. And you can see, I mean, from other versions that are other stock versions of Android, pretty similar.